So what's the general consensus on nonfiction books? Admittedly, I read mostly fiction books now, but when I first started my reading journey about 2 years ago, I started with only nonfiction. Now, there's a whole reason for that. I was getting into business and wanting to, dive into the self-help genre and all that good stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But even now, even when I'm in the middle of 3 different fantasy series that I'm really into, it's nice to take a break once in a while and read a narrative nonfiction book. And so today we're going to talk about 7 nonfiction books that I think every fiction reader would actually enjoy because they're written in such a way that it's not a bunch of information that's just being poured out onto you, but it's actually narratively great works that you can actually learn from. Let's dive in. The first book on this list is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Now, this book is not necessarily about how to make $1 million. It's more about how you think about money, hence the title, The Psychology of Money. My favorite story in here is an example that he talks about when he was a valet for a high-end hotel, and he sees a Ferrari driver drive up, and he thinks in his head, wow, it'd be great if I was the one driving that Ferrari. But then he realizes the guy driving the Ferrari is probably thinking, oh, these valet people are probably thinking that I'm so cool and that I have a bunch of money. But in reality, the valet drivers were actually thinking, I don't care who this guy is, I just want his car. And so by explaining that story, he's basically showing you that the way that you think that money will affect you is not actually how it does affect you, right? If you're chasing money simply for the status, the prestige, and the reputation, a lot of the times that's not how people actually end up viewing you because they only care about themselves. We are innately selfish people. And therefore, the act of chasing money is not bad in its own right, but you have to know why you're chasing money. And so, as a great reminder of why you're actually working as hard as you do, why you're actually pursuing the things that you're pursuing, at least in monetary gains, this is a great book for you to read. And it's told in a very story-driven way that won't leave you bored at any point. The second book on this list is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Now, this is a story of how Phil Knight grew Nike to be a $1 billion sports shoe brand. And I thought it was originally going to be kind of boring, like a biography. It's actually a story of just pure grit and resilience. And this is one of those books where you don't expect a lot of the things that happen in this book because of Nike's reputation as a $1 billion brand, right? Nike is the one who is a company who signs all of these multi-million-dollar athletes. They're known to be the biggest performance brand in the world, but you would have never expected all of the things that happen at the beginning of the journey. I mean, Nike almost failed as a company, almost went bankrupt more times than I can count. And all of that is said and explained through this book. And so more than anything else, more than learning about how to build a $1 billion brand, this book really teaches you how to be resilient in the face of failure. And we all need that in our lives, right? Because we fail pretty much all the time. We just don't like to admit it. Phil Knight does a great job of explaining why it's necessary for us to fail, why it's necessary for us to learn from those mistakes and learn from, all of the experiences in our past. And he's able to build something great from it. This is an amazing read. I would highly recommend it. Even if you're not trying to build a $1 billion company, this is still a great book for you. The next book is Influence by Robert Cialdini. Now, this is every marketer's favorite book, but it's actually really applicable to anyone working in corporate, anyone trying to build their own business, anyone trying to make content, because it deals with how to influence people, like the name suggests. However, it's told in such a way it's written in such a way that makes complicated and technical terms easy to understand. Things like reciprocation, things like social proof, all of these marketing concepts that we're able to use in our day-to-day lives in order to influence people, whether that's to influence people to buy, whether that's to influence people to give us a promotion, whether that's to influence people to even hire us for a new job, right? This book will teach you how to do those things and will teach you how to do them, not to do them in nefarious ways, but to do them with understanding human psychology and understanding what causes people to say yes to you. So if you want to learn how to be more persuasive in life, which is a great, amazing skill to have, this is a great book for you. Next up on this list is probably the book that I think about almost every single day, and that is Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. This was such an unexpected book for me. I knew of Malcolm Gladwell. I didn't know what his books were typically about, but I picked this book up. I listened to it on audiobook and I read the physical copy because it just affected me that much. I mean, this is not a small book by any means, but it really is about how we are in general very terrible at talking to strangers. And he talks about some of the biggest pitfalls in history from two people talking to each other, like, a CIA operative who was actually a spy for the Cuban government. Or he talks about, the whole Black Lives Matter movements and some of the cases involved in that, and how there were huge misunderstandings, but also how social history and how psychology play into all of these different conversations and have led to some tragic circumstances that could have been avoided had we, given ourselves education on how other people think. And so this book really changed how I view the entire world, how I approach conversations with people, and how I think about every single conversation that I've ever had. And so this is a life-changing book. It's not an exaggeration to say this is life-changing, and you should definitely pick this one up as well. Number 5, I think, is Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull. Now, this is a story of Pixar and how Pixar comes up with its stories, how it comes up with different storylines for its movies, and how the company built its success, right? Ed Catmull himself is not necessarily an animator. He's more on the technical side of animation, but in the CEO of Pixar, he has this amazing insight into how to build a creative company, even if you yourself are not necessarily that creative mastermind in a sense, right? And it's awesome to see the inner workings of one of the biggest animation companies in the world, if not the biggest, and how they're able to, one, give open feedback to their entire teams, and two, to get an inside look into the creative process of what it's like to create a story that people will relate to. Because Pixar is a story-driven company, obviously this book is written in a very story-driven way. And so it's very entertaining because you also have callbacks to some of the greatest stories that were ever told, like Toy Story or WALL-E or Up, and you get an inside look into the brains behind those stories. And so that's a great book for you to read. Number 6 on this list is the only business-centric book, and that is Oversubscribed by Daniel PEACEEE. Now, I picked this book up because I was starting an online business, and Daniel PEACEEE's main thesis of this book is that everything in business falls downstream from lead generation. Hence why there's a bunch of people on the cover and it looks like they're flowing down a river. That concept is pretty universal in business. However, the way that Daniel PEACEEE writes about it and the way that the sort of strategies that he employs throughout the book and throughout all of his companies is really, really informative, and it's really simple, and it's really just very good for, I think, anyone to read, because whether you're trying to start a business, whether you're trying to create content online, whether you're a salesperson at a tech company or even a right? You want more customers. That's how you grow in business. And this, hand in hand with Influence, the book that I talked about earlier about influence, would be a great addition to just your day-to-day skill building, your corporate skill building, and it's a great read for really anyone looking to grow in their career. Oversubscribed by Daniel PEACEEE. And last but not least is a book that I actually read on Kindle, so I don't have a physical copy, but this is Never Enough, From Barista to Billionaire by Andrew Wilkinson. Now, this book is about a billionaire, as it clearly says, and it talks more about what money can not do for you rather than what money can do for you, right? And so the main thesis of the book is that, yes, he has a lot of money, this man, Andrew Wilkinson, but at the end of the book, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but at the end of the book, he comes to the realization that all of the billions of dollars don't really bring him that much satisfaction. And there's many, many stories along the way that prove that to him, right? And so even if you are someone who is going for the $1 billion company, even if you are someone who is going for the riches and the fame and all this stuff, just know that it won't bring you the ultimate fulfillment, the ultimate happiness. This book is kind of like The Psychology of Money in the sense that the main themes are similar. However, The Psychology of Money is more informative, and this, From Barista to Billionaire, is more narrative driven and talks about, and Andrew Wilkinson obviously talks about his own experiences talking to billionaires, being a billionaire himself. And it's just a great book for anyone who is struggling with this idea of meaning and purpose in their lives. And if you have tied that so much to money, it kind of breaks you out of that mold. And so that's a great book to read as well. For anyone who is just kind of lost and wants more purpose and fulfillment in their lives, great read, very fast read. Andrew Wilkinson's a great writer as well. So yeah, I don't know if fiction readers will even read nonfiction nowadays, but these are pretty good books for any fiction reader to read. And you read only fiction, you read only certain genres, kind of breaking out of those genres to read new books in different genres is one of the best ways to get out of reading slump. That's happened to me multiple times where after finishing Empire of Silence, I was in a massive book slump because I hated that book. And picking up a nonfiction really helped me to get out of that funk and to really move on from the slowness and boring pace of the Empire of Silence. I have read for Howling Dark, and I'm coming around to the series, by the way, so don't come after me in the comments for that. But in any case, pick up some nonfiction books. They're really good for you. They'll stimulate your brain in ways that fiction and fantasy can't. And if you have any recs for me, please leave them in the comments below. Love you guys. Peace!